I won't be wronged. I won't be insulted. I won't be laid a hand on. I don't do these things to other people, and I require the same from them. I'm Chris Spivey.
And I'm Eddy Webb.
And today we wrap up the Western genre. Hello, listeners. Welcome. It's high noon here on Genreless.
It's at 2 p.m. actually here, so not high noon anymore.
All right, maybe it's about 9:03 here, but still, it is close enough to high noon as we're closing this out. Eddy, did you think you would make it throughout this entire run?
I mean, yes, in the sense that I like talking to you. So, I mean, probably. But we talked about this before. Like, I feel like this change in how we do these longer runs has really helped. And to be fair, the last long run we did was Sherlock Holmes, so I was the one kind of driving the train on that one. So this is the first time I was on the receiving end of the new structure of the longer run, and I was expecting to be like, okay, maybe I'm about done, but I never really felt that way. I always felt like there was something new and interesting each time. So I never felt like, oh, this is the same thing again, you know?
So I could have kept my shorter list of 40 things to cover and we would have been fine. Is that what you're saying?
I didn't say we would be fine. But I mean, I also think like leaving when I'm still like, oh, I could probably do a few more. That's probably a good time to wrap it up anyway.
So the most important question I'm pretty sure that everyone is concerned about is, has your opinion of the Western genre changed? And if so, how?
Absolutely it has. On a basic level, I like Westerns more. I mean, that's the bottom line. But on a more nuanced level, I understands what they're trying to do more, I think. I feel like my initial perspective of Westerns isn't invalid, but it's the same way that people look at a certain section of anime and go, oh, that's all anime, right? You can look at any genre, look at a small section of them that pop culture has told you is what it is and go, oh, I think I understand that thing. And you're wrong, partially because, as we've talked about many, many times in this podcast, genre is kind of a bullshit random acclamation of whatever people kind of agree at this moment the genre is. But for this specific thing, it was actually useful to look at a genre that's for our purposes, span 70 years, even though it's still going on today, and
I'd say over 10 decades.
Right. Yes. I mean, close to a century is probably more accurate.
Because I think our first thing started like in 1880 something, late 1880s.
Oh, true, with the silent films. So yeah, it was over a century. That's a good point. But like watching that evolve was interesting because we got to watch the tropes start to codify, then to fossilize, then to get subverted, and then to get absolutely broken, and then to kind of rebuild them into a new form, right? So you could see all the different approaches to the same material in very different ways. And so we have things like, I mean, if you put Stagecoach next to True Grit, just the two ends of our run, right? They're wildly different films. But by going through this long train of movies, I can look at Stagecoach and I can look at True Grit and say, yes, these do have a commonality. Whereas without that progression, I could have felt like I could have argued, well, just because they have the same color hats and are in roughly the same time period doesn't mean they're the same movie. I don't think that's a valid argument anymore, right? Because there's a long chain between those.
Funnily enough, I could say the commonality was John Wayne if we done the other version of True Grit.
Right.
Which in one sense shows like most of the breadth of John Wayne's career too was the Western genre. He did some more other stuff in World War II films and whatever else. But when people say Westerns, regardless of how I feel about John Wayne, he is quintessentially linked to the Western genre.
Right.
And it's fascinating in one sense because even the quote I started with today is from John Wayne's last movie. It's The Shootist. It's basically about a dying gunslinger who finds out he has cancer and goes to town to sort of quietly retire, but things, of course, go sideways. And John Wayne was the star of that movie, and he pulled it, and he hand-selected basically Lauren Bacall to be in the movie, and he brought Jimmy Stewart back out of semi-retirement to be in the movie with him.
Wow.
And on the whole, it's a decent movie. It's one of the movies that talks about like the dying of the West through or through the death of an older gunfighter. You can say the same thing from like the gunfighter in like 1950 with Gregory Peck. So the genre's also been playing with its own death in some sense too since its inception almost.
Right, because I mean, we've seen 2-ish quote unquote death of the Westerns in our run. You know, there was I thought was a huge gap, potentially only be 6 years long, between Blazing Saddles and Heaven's Gate. You know, for some reason I thought it was a much bigger gap between the 70s and 80s. You know, and then again, like the alleged gap between the 80s and the 90s, early 90s renaissance of big blockbuster Western movies with Posse and Tombstone. But again, we saw that that's not true. There was always Westerns going on, a bit like Sherlock Holmes. Sometimes it's very popular, sometimes it's not popular at all, but it's always kind of happening. And sometimes when it's in the ebbs is when the more interesting stuff's going on. I mean, like now we look at spaghetti Westerns, right? And we go, oh my God, spaghetti Westerns revolutionized Westerns. But like at the time, no one was watching Westerns when Italy was making Westerns. And after they became popular, people went, oh, hey, there's some interesting stuff here. But at the time, no one was thinking about that. And so I was like, sure, I guess we'll just make another cheap Western because they're cheap.
Well, it's kind of always mentioned in the first episode during that 60s period is when it was going on it's high in the decline. That's when like the spy genre was high on the upswing. So that's when you get things like Wild Wild West, which is something I would love to cover sometime. Yeah. The TV series, we'd have to cover the movie too, just to cap it off.
Sure, just because
that's how my brain works. But that's when we get that shift. And all right, you know what? We're getting too philosophical, too early, Eddie. For you, we're gonna play a little game.
Okay.
We're gonna play Keep One, Erase One. It's our wrap-up episode. You know that we're gonna have a game or two.
Sure.
So, start off. Since you mentioned Tombstone, High Noon or Tombstone? You can only keep one.
Oh,
yeah,
damn.
Yeah. Great movie and a movie I know that you love. Which one, huh?
Damn. What are my criteria for choosing? Just what I would watch or what I think are important, or
if there could only be one in existence, which one?
Oh, damn. I shouldn't have that much power. That's not fair to anybody.
Well,
but yeah,
become the Beyonder.
If I have to snap my fingers and eradicate half of the Westerns, I would very grudgingly have to get rid of Tombstone because High Noon is a better film, I think.
Whoa!
I like Tombstone, but High Noon's a better film.
All right. This is going to be fun. I am surprised by that. I thought that you would have got rid of one of my favorite Westerns, High Noon, but no. Interesting.
Right. Well, because, so again, that's why I asked for the criteria, because if we're going by just, this is my DVD collection, I have to get rid of half of them, I would pick High Noon. Right. But I've watched Tombstone enough. I have not watched High Noon enough. So like, I would like to appreciate High Noon more than I would necessarily. I've seen Tombstone enough, I can quote large chunks of it. So if I never watched it again, I would be less impacted than if I could never watch High Noon again.
Okay. All right. Django or The Quick and the Dead?
I mean, keep Django, obviously. It's got a Gatling gun. Why would you get rid of Django?
All right. I'm okay. Whatever. All right. How about this one then? Silverado or True Grit?
Ooh, Western the Western, or the most interesting and compelling Western I've seen.
Yeah. They
Well,
can't all be
gee.
easy. Some of them have to be harder than others.
I mean, I love Western the Western, but True Grit again is I think just a better film. So I would probably have to get rid of Silverado.
So what about True Grit makes it like the pinnacle for you over Western the Western?
So uh, what I liked about Silverado was that it was a celebration of the genre. I mean, we joked about it by calling it Western to Western, but really it was kind of just a celebration of here's what Westerns can do, and there's fun and it's interesting. Um, True Grit to me was a good movie, and the fact that it was a Western was not a piece that required me to enjoy it. Right. The fact that it's a Western gave me an additional level of enjoyment that I didn't have the first time I watched it. And so I was able to watch it a second time for this podcast. I think I appreciated it more because, like, oh, now I understand a lot more what Westerns are doing. So therefore, I get what this movie's trying to do as a result. But True Grit is just a really interesting emotional journey. Silverado is a bunch of fun stuff that happens.
Okay. Just two more because I'm not going to make the whole thing this.
It's all list.
Johnny Guitar or the Oxbow incident?
Oh,
Because if I remember right, you loved both of those for different reasons.
I do. But I'll have to give the edge to the Oxbow incident because now we're doing this. I think my trend is I like movies that have interesting character dynamics. And to be fair, both of those do. But the Oxbow incident just kind of edges it out for me.
What about the Oxbow incident makes it stand out more?
I think it's because it's an interesting look at mob mentality and crowd dynamics. And even given what I know of how movies are made in the 50s and how people are going to do Westerns in the 50s, at one point I genuinely didn't know where that movie was going to go. Right. I remember when we talked about it, I was like, and then the sheriff comes in, he says, you know, your guys are all under arrest. And it felt a bit anticlimactic because in a modern movie, that wouldn't have been how that ended. But that's a very specific subtype of otherwise an interesting, morally complex film. Johnny Guitar, again, interesting, a little more complex, but mostly for its subversion of a woman can be the protagonist, and Johnny Guitar is just actually weirdly not the protagonist. But once you know that, I don't think the movie gets richer by rewatching it. Whereas I think I would like to watch the Oxbow incident again at some point in time, knowing how it goes and seeing that evolve a bit more.
That's a really good point. Huh. All right, so I lied. I made you one or two more of these because I'm having more fun now.
You're having fun with it, let's go for it.
Well, of course, but I'm going to throw you for a loop before I get back on point. Cleopatra Jones or Shaft?
Ooh, that's an interesting one.
If you're not a listener, if you're not on the Patreon, you will not get this. So I'll come back to Western in a second, but I'm in this now.
Oh, that's surprisingly tough because Shaft is an icon, but Cleopatra Jones was really, 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 really fun. Gonna have to go with shitty though and say Shaft.
All right, why Shaft over Cleopatra Jones?
It's hard to say entirely. I think because it's such a fascinating blend of both 70s detective movies and a bit of James Bond, which, to be fair, Cleopatra Jones also has more than a bit of James Bond in it. But I think for some reason, Shaft's merging of those sparked a little bit better. And honestly, if you ask me this question 3 weeks from now, I may have a different answer. That's how close it is to me.
You can admit it that Isaac Hayes' theme song is the reason Shaft is successful as it is. We all get that.
I mean, to be fair, you're not wrong, but also the music in Cleopatra Jones was good too. So,
or the direction by Gordon Park. Well, I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
All right, two more, then we'll stop this game because I think our listeners may get more bored than I am. El Topo. So now I got to be very careful with the next one. It'll be too easy. or Heaven's
Right.
Gate.
Okay, that's actually definitely which one is the least terrible for me.
Well, it's also two people with distinctive visions that threw
Yeah,
everything they had in each one of those movies,
that's
trying to change a genre.
very true. That's very true. And neither of them succeeded in their goal. Well, let me phrase that. Both of them had extremely limited success, but not what they intended, right? Uh, but man, I don't know if I can live in a world with El Topo anymore. I mean, it's just, yeah. You know what? I'm sorry, I have to eradicate El Topo. I mean, just a little too much little boy penis for me to really comfortably embrace that movie.
I'm not making that joke, Eddie. You put that joke out there. All right. I'll end, I think, with an easier one for you instead of doing what I was gonna do. Billy the Kid versus Dracula. Or you know what? No, I'm not gonna make it that easy. Let's go Red Sun or the Valley of Guanchi.
Oh, I thought you go Red Sun versus Sukiyaki Western Django. Um, I think it would be
I
Red
was
Sun.
gonna go originally like
Mhm.
Billy the Kid versus something, but we all know Billy the Kid's gonna lose.
Right. Actually, I'd say Red Sun. I really enjoyed Red Sun.
Okay.
Valley of Guanji was
Easy.
fun, but yeah.
Too easy.
So actually, I have not a game, but just kind of a question for you because some of these movies, I think I know why you chose them. Um, but I'm curious about others. Like, okay, so Stagecoach was just because I think it's an iconic movie, and also it got your John Wayne box checked, so we can never have to talk about him again.
But somehow we always seem to talk about John Wayne, so I could insult him and
You
drag
can't
him.
avoid it. Um, Oxbow Incident. Is that another just because it's a classic? Although I think we talked about it, it's like I was surprised it's not as classic as people think it is.
No, because one, I knew it was a good movie, but two, I knew it was noir, and we're early
Right.
on in the Western run,
Yeah.
and I wanted you to at least see that there were good westerns you'd like, and I figured there was enough noir that even if you weren't hooked by the westernness of the noir piece, would click with you.
Right.
So some of them were strategic picks to get Eddie more engaged in
I
westerns.
was wondering about that because it's funny because since then, at least two other people have mentioned Oxbow Incident as being a western they liked, and so I was like, maybe it is more popular than I thought it was. But also, these are people that I like their taste, so it may just be a case of our tastes have aligned.
Because I remember when we first started talking about the Western runs, you explained part of the reasons why you didn't like Westerns and you didn't really
Yeah.
get into Westerns.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to show you that, like, I understand that. And I had some problems with Westerns early on myself. But like I said, for me, it was watching with my grandmother. So it became like a whole ritual thing. But
Right.
I knew there was stuff in Westerns that from our time talking about media together, that you would like. And I wanted to
Right.
give you one early on that wouldn't necessarily win you over, but show you that, well, you know what, maybe there's some versatility there that I could look into and approach it more neutrally.
And I think you did a good job with that. So High Noon's a classic, obviously.
And it's
I guess
also
the
my
game now
favorite
is just
Western.
me see if I can guess why you chose these. Um, Johnny Western.
Johnny Western.
Actually, sorry, Johnny Western. Johnny Guitar. Basically, a Johnny Western. Is that just because it was a subversion of the tropes, or is it just because
It is
female
a movie
lead?
that a lot of people don't talk about. I wanted a female-led Western from a classic film, and I was thinking of possibly going like the Furies that would have had Barbara Stanwyck, or there's like a 50 rifles, 50 guns or something with Barbara Stanwyck from the 50s, but the timeline didn't sync up.
Right.
And I decided to go with that in the end because I don't think anyone else talks about it.
That's fair. It's fair. I never heard of it, and I don't think I've heard of it since. Sergeant Rutledge. I think we talked about when we were talking about that one, why that one was picked.
I wasn't going to pick it because it was a John Ford movie, and I was like, we can't not talk about Sergeant Rutledge,
right?
Because it was one of the It was a John Ford sort of one of the movies that people consider him trying to rewrite his own career, like his own history of movies.
Right. Yes. And Billy Kid vs. Dracula was just straight up you trolling me at this point. Or I suppose you could call it
I
a
could have
palate
went.
cleanser.
I could have went Jesse James versus like the Wolf Woman or whatever that was. If
Right.
that would have been not much better.
I think we talked at the time like that was a double bill at one point. Was those two movies?
There's one from
Django.
the late 40s that was a horror movie that's supposed to be really good that I don't think I've ever seen that I want us to cover.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Django, obviously, you can't really talk about westerns without talking about Django. Or sorry, you can't talk spaghetti westerns without talking about Django. So it's kind of, and also we'd seen Django Unchained before all of this, so makes sense.
It was more that we'd seen Django Unchained, and I didn't necessarily want to cover the Dollars trilogy, because if we cover the Dollars, I want to do like all the Dollars movies, and then we cover the Magnificence. Threw myself off. Then we'll cover all the movies that Sergio ripped off.
Right. We talked about maybe at one point doing let's do a Akira Kurosawa film and then do the Western movie that ripped off Akira Kurosawa and comparing those. But
yeah, that's the kind of run I want to do, so I skipped all those. And I wanted to minimize Clint Eastwood.
Which is fair. I didn't like him. And so Once Upon a Time in the West was just, we had to do a Leone film, right? If we can't do the other ones.
And it's the one that people consider to really be like his masterpiece. Like the other people like the other movies, but like that is the one people consider like when he hit his peak. Because after that, I think he started doing like, he wanted to do a gang trilogy, which like this movie, the studio wanted him to do Westerns, and this was going to be a gang movie. So he said, all right, I'll do one more Western movie. Right. And that's what that was. And then it became like Once Upon a Time in America, I think.
Oh, okay. Valley of Gwangi, Troll number 2.
That was more than a troll. We needed some weird Westerns in there, and that one was just going to be funny.
It was fair. Although El Topo may be even more of a troll inadvertently.
El Topo was my troll.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
You know why it's my troll? Because I didn't cover it.
Good point. Although really we ended up talking more about El Topo than I think I expected to after we watched it. It became kind of a weird touchstone of, first it was a joke, but then like it became an interesting weird touchstone for the second half of the run.
Because, all right, regardless of what you think of El Topo, it is a movie that once you've seen it, it becomes a reference point going forward.
Sure.
Like, I'm not going to say that's a successful move, but it is a move to make.
Right. It definitely sticks in your head whether you want it to or not. Red Sun. Was that just because it has samurai in it and you thought I'd like that?
Well, to some extent. All right. So the hard part of getting the movie was trying to find movies that fit my criteria for what you established. But I also wanted to show movies that had a lot of other like marginalized groups. But at the same time, I wanted the representation of marginalized groups to be neutral to positive. I didn't want to have like a lot of derogatory things. And Red Sun was like a good touch point for that. It was like funny. It shows like the Western and Eastern Coast movies hitting together. And it was respectful as much as you could be at the time of both cultures.
Which I think that also flows into Buck and the Preacher too, for similar reasons, right?
Well, we're going to watch Buck and the Preacher regardless because it's a black-made Western. So there was no way we weren't doing that.
Right. But it flows well. And then, of course, Blazing Saddles also extends from that. But I think I remember saying it was a movie I had seen before and liked. So that may be another reason. Heaven's Gate? Was that just because that was so iconically like, this killed the Western? Because of his reputation? Okay.
Yeah, because I wanted to like debunk that. Regardless, I think of however we viewed the movie, which if you want to know, you should go back and listen to the episode if you haven't. But I wanted to debunk the thing that Heaven's Gate killed the Western because the Westerns never died. That Heaven's Gate changed Hollywood and the freedom that directors had. True.
Yeah, it arguably killed United Artists, but it didn't kill Western. Silverado, we've joked about why we chose that one because it's Western in the movie. Western. Pale Rider, because I guess we had to do a Clint Eastwood one at some point.
We did. I could not justify to myself doing a Western without doing a Clint Eastwood movie.
Right.
And I wanted like 2 for the 80s. And that was a good way to knock out both of those.
Yeah, I suppose because Heaven's Gate is technically 1980, but it's really more of a 70s film in
Yeah,
feel and vibe. Yeah,
yeah.
that's fair. Posse.
Do I need to explain why we did Posse? Like that's
Because it's another, because it has lots of really cool black actors in it, I assume.
and it was Mario Van Peebles, and like it was. It was trying to do something that I don't think it successfully did. I would say from a lot of Hollywood interference.
Right. And,
And
yeah,
too
we talked
much of
about
his
that.
chest. Way too much of his chest. Like,
So
put on a
he
shirt,
was
man.
he was so naked. Um, Tombstone,
I
because I've seen
support
it before.
nudity, but at some point in time, you gotta wear a shirt.
Right, right. Tombstone was obviously because it's the
You
one
loved it.
Western I remember having seen before.
And it had Val Kilmer's Doc Holliday, and everybody loves it.
Right, right. It is an iconic movie in that regard. Quick and Dead, because another female led movie, I guess.
And it's Sam Raimi.
And Sam Raimi. And then we get to Sukiyaki Western Django, because holy shit, that movie.
So, all right, we didn't cover the Burrowers. One of the reasons I chose the Burrowers is because I wanted a straight up horror Western in there.
Right.
Which I'm okay not covering. I almost added Wind, but Wind, I want to say, was like 2012. And I wanted to cap this run off at 2010. Like,
okay.
Because once we decided we weren't going to do 30 or 35 movies, I wanted to try to narrow the scope, which is why some of the movies I've referenced got dropped. Like, I would have really wanted to cover, I think it's District Rides Again, which would have been our first or second movie, because that was Jimmy Stewart, and I forgot her name, but she was a super famous like German actress who Blazing Saddles riffs on for Madeline Kahn's character.
Oh, okay.
So that's something that we may cover in the future. But like, so I had to make some very strategic choices that hurt my soul to do.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, trust me. I know, like, with the Sherlock Holmes run, I kept like, we can't cover this. Oh, we can't cover this. Oh, we can't cover this. So I feel you. Sometimes it's hard to pare it down. That's what curation. That's why curation is a lost art. You shouldn't give it to an algorithm. Let humans do this.
100% agree. And one of the other things is I found some other movies that had stronger indigenous presence as a primary character, as settings, but like one of them was a 1980s film that I thought was going to be it, but I looked into it, and the lead character is a white dude, but everyone else around them is an indigenous person, but he is like the indigenous character in the movie. It's like, nope, we're not covering that.
Sounds like some Dances with Wolves bullshit. Yeah.
So there was like at least Dances with Wolves, Kevin Costner was like a white dude that jumps into their group.
Oh, this is literally playing an indigenous character.
Yes, and I was like,
oh, whoa. That's even worse.
So there were one or two of those. It's like, I'm not doing that. So it became really hard. And like, I see some ways I would redo it now, knowing that we're going to do like 23 movies. I wouldn't redo it much, like very small changes.
Out of curiosity, which movies would you take off the list if you do it over again?
I would probably cut Pale Rider, just because I feel like we need a Clint Eastwood, but and I would potentially cut Billy and the Kid versus Dracula.
Huh.
And I would add in two other things. Like, I would have probably batted in that 40s or 50s Western and just had us stay in that decade a little bit longer than I wanted. And sacrifice a loss there. And maybe I would have added Young Guns just to have a happy movie in there.
Yeah, I mean, I was not going to argue for including more movies because I feel like this is about the right length. But admittedly, I was a little surprised that we didn't do Young Guns, but I'm glad we did Posse instead. I feel like that was a better movie to talk about that topics with. But Young Guns was like the other big 90s Western movie that I knew about. It was Young Guns, Young Guns 2. I think there was even Young Guns 3 as direct DVD.
And there was a God, what was it? Like a 1994-ish movie called, it was like Roses or something. It was about 4 female gunfighters, but it was like, I think a really bad movie that I would have potentially added in. But I don't think it was in proper distribution is what it was. So there are like lots of things like that. Because I tried to take in distribution, representation, things that we would have fun talking about, not things that we just hate watch.
Right, which which I appreciate because that's something I noticed in earlier seasons of this podcast. Sometimes we end up just hate watching things. It's just like we were usually able to salvage an interesting conversation out of it, but certainly it became like, yeah, but we're just beating this thing with a stick, after an hour and a half.
And our initial mission statement was to talk about shows that we love, and that has evolved over the past 5 years. Like we've been doing this
Right.
5 years.
Yeah, crazy.
Jesus. But that's evolved now to we're literally more of like just a media podcast, but I wanted to keep our more positive bent. And if there's something that we don't necessarily love, think about constructive ways that we could engage with that media and give our own ideas about how it could have been better in our opinions, which doesn't matter to anybody because it's already out, but it's a constructive conversation about creation.
Yeah, like I feel that, especially, and this runs to a certain degree, like I like that we've evolved to a place where, like, if something's not working, we're both now more comfortable calling that out. But we try to shy away from this is a bad movie, this is a bad show, into or this isn't working for me, or I would not watch this again. And I think a fantastic representation of that, honestly, is Mr. Holmes, because like it was a movie you very much did not get along with. It was a movie that I still very much enjoy. But we had a really cool conversation around that about why it didn't work. It didn't work, and largely ended up just mostly agreeing on everything. It's just at the end of the day, it wasn't to your taste; it's to mine. And so I think that's a good way to engage with media, and I'm glad that we've settled on that, while still keeping a relatively. Because I mean, let's be honest. I would rather talk about El Topo any day of the week than hear someone go on for an hour and a half long YouTube rant about how the latest media thing sucks. Right?
Yeah.
Perfect example is modern Doctor Who, right? Like, I've not been a fan of the last couple seasons of Doctor Who for a variety of reasons, but none of that is related to Shooty. And I've seen no end of videos. They're just like, everything's terrible, and this is why Shooty got what sucks, and blah 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 blah. And it's just like, I don't want that in my life anymore, right? I'm totally fine with people going, here's why I didn't like this thing, but here's what was good about it. And I think anything worthwhile, you can find something to pull out of it to say, here's something that's interesting to look at. The Matrix trilogy that we did, that brief thing. It's like we went the Matrix trilogy, to be blunt, starts at one level and just goes downhill from there. Right? It never really goes back up at any point in time during those four.
The Matrix quadrilogy.
Right, the Matrix trilogy and the other one. Right? Yes.
Well, then where does Animatrix fit, Eddie? Because Animatrix is a movie they put out too.
We didn't talk about it. It's there for
Five Zilogy.
Right.
The Matrix 5 Zilogy. There you go.
The Matrix franchise, if you want to be fucking pedantic about it. But like, we were pretty open about like going, it starts at a peak, and each movie we liked less and less. But man, there's some interesting stuff to talk about in those other three movies.
Yes, hands down agree. All right, if we're going to do retrospective on ourselves, I think the only episode I still feel bad about us covering, it's not even the Michael B. Jordan anime that I made us watch without really knowing it, is our Batwoman episode.
Yeah, that was a hate watch.
And I'd say that maybe Secret Invasion, but I need to re-listen to Secret Invasion, and I'm never going to do that. So,
well,
but I think we're more neutral in Secret Invasion, though.
My memory of Secret Invasion was us kind of feeling like Samuel Jackson deserved better. Really, it was just kind of meh. The whole thing was just meh. And it's like we were more mad at it because Samuel L. Jackson and Nick Fury, both the actor and the character, deserve something better than just a meh show. So I don't think we hated it. Whereas Batwoman, we were just like, oh my god, why are we watching this? It was very much the vibe of that, and it sucked because that was a show I was like, I hadn't really watched. I was like, this is probably going to be at least interesting, and it just wasn't.
Yeah, it was in the middle of a long run. It was really bad too. There's a bunch of things that played against it. So that,
right,
I think, is the only show I feel bad about having done.
Yeah. And I don't feel about any of these, right? Like I'm looking over this list again. First of all, thank you for putting this list together. It's actually very helpful for this recollection.
we've done one or two of these now, and I realize that we need the list to reference for both of us. We're,
Right.
we're men of a certain age.
Yes, and a very little brain in our memory. At least I am. But like I'm looking over this list now, and like every one of those, I can recollect at least one or two talking points we had, which is impressive. You know, like I remember certain conversations we had about Stagecoach and Oxbow just as much as Sukiyaki Western Django and True Grit. So I felt like all of these were, if nothing else, interesting conversations. Even El Topo, we joked about how bad it was, but it was frankly a fascinating conversation.
All right, then El Topo or Pale Rider, if one of them didn't have to exist, which one?
Oh, get rid of Pale Rider. Because okay, even though we had good conversations about Pale Rider, right? I think this is a fair point about our podcast. There are certain creatives that we just ideologically don't get along with, and that does color our conversation sometimes, right? Sometimes it doesn't matter because we're just never going to cover them, right? Like, fuck Firefly Into the Sun. We're never going to talk about Firefly for lots
or
of
Buffy,
reasons.
or Angel.
Right. For lots of reasons, but
I cannot say though that we would not cover Alien Resurrection though.
Okay,
because
fair.
We could do an Alien run. Maybe. I've been wanting to do an Aliens run.
But my point is like sometimes we come across a Clint Eastwood, whatever, and it's just like it's really hard sometimes to escape the gravity of like, yeah, I know what this person is like, and that's hard to talk about. The Doctor Who run, right? We ran into a bit of that with John Nathan Turner. The 80s were sometimes hard to talk about because it's like, yeah, but John Nathan Turner, and then the Colin Baker era in particular, it was like, we got to do Colin Baker, but do we really want to do this? Let's. But even then, like, I felt like we got some fun conversations out of it. And so I think we found our sweet spot, and the Western run has been a good proof of concept of after 5 years, we finally figured out how the hell this works.
We're going to blow it up for the next run though.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, that, or you know what? Or I would have added 2 more movies, but I think adding the 2 more movies would have pushed over the top.
Yeah, because again, like, I mean, like where I'm at, right? Because obviously it's something you love. There's got to be a tricky balance because, like, I came into this burned by Westerns in the past, put it that way, right? I came in negative but interested to be convinced otherwise. And so you have to be careful, right? Because, like, if you give me too much, it's like, okay, you don't want to inadvertently push me back over the edge. And so let me say at the front, I never felt like I was ever going over the edge. If nothing else, each conversation got me more and more excited about the topic.
Thank you.
Since we've started, I have, on my own initiative, read a few Western comics. I've not quite to the level of getting a Western novel, but I have been debating like either a Zane Grey or Louis L'Amour maybe once.
Nice.
So like it's got me to the point where I'm now curious on my own outside of the prescribed reading, as it were. And we talked about even like with True Grit, it's like there's a couple of these movies that are referential to movies we didn't talk about that maybe not right away, but at some point in time, if I come across like, oh, hey, for True Grit 6ix9ine's on, I've been meaning to watch that, so I'll watch it. Whereas before I've been like, okay, whatever, and never done that. So I'm definitely moved to, I'm curious. I still personally feel like I like my Westerns leavened with another genre. I still like to have a Western with a bit of sci-fi or a bit of supernatural or whatever, a bit of noir, what have you. But
okay. Having said that, what are your top 3 Westerns from this run that we've done? In order, start with 3 as the lowest one and go up to 1.
Right. See, I knew this was going to happen. I was hoping we were going to avoid this conversation because I didn't do any of this work.
You put your foot in it because of that. I dropped it from 5 to 3 though. Look at my generosity.
Well, yeah, that actually makes it harder, you realize, because now I have to pick 3 out of this massive list. I mean, like, and trust me, I'm tempted to just say El Topo, Billy the Kid vs. Dracula, and Johnny Guitar just to fuck with you. Um, I'm sorry, but I meant posse. No, like on a so I'm gonna do two lists. I'm gonna do just my enjoyments versus movies that I think are good. I think there are different lists. Um, number three of just lists I would enjoy. Tombstone is number three. Tombstone would be in the top three of any of that list, regardless. I think it's just a movie I've always loved. I really enjoy it. Number two, probably Blazing Saddles. Again, another movie I've always loved. I'll probably continue to enjoy loving it. But you notice neither of those number one.
Oh, by the way, happy 100th birthday to Mel Brooks, belated.
Oh yeah, that's right. I saw that recently. Yeah, he's 100 years. He's still alive. Holy crap, that man. But number one, I have this up there because I keep debating buying it. So I feel like this clearly says something to me.
Heaven's Gate. Wow, Eddie.
No, God, no, Christ. I'd rather watch Xanadu than Heaven's Gate again. It's just much roller skating in it.
You saw the short version.
God, yes. The Oxbow incident probably actually be the one that I've debated buying a couple times.
Nice. I love that.
Now, top three movies I think are good. Sadly, actually, Oxbow incident might be number three of that list. I don't know. Maybe I think about that for a second. Let's from. Okay, actually, I'm looking at this. No, High Noon's number three. Yeah, I like it. I think it's a good movie. I think it's a good representative example of that 50s era of Western. But I think that actually, I don't know about this. Yeah, I think Once Upon a Time in the West is probably more another representative sample of its era, but probably a little more. What's the word I'm looking for? It's Leone in the '60s, right? Like it's kind of a big thing in the same way that High Noon is. High Noon wasn't Ford, was it? No, High Noon wasn't Ford.
No.
Right.
I don't remember now off the top of my head who it was, but
right, and maybe that's it because like the one Ford film we have was very much Ford trying to not do a John Ford film, so that's maybe why it's not ranking as high.
Well, we've got two Ford films because Stagecoach was Ford and Sergeant Russell was Ford.
Right. Okay, that's right. Because we talked about the bookends of Ford's career. Still, I mean, I think High Noon needs to be on that list. So maybe let me flip those. Actually, let me do what's high on the list of three. High Noon at two. And this may be recency bias. I recognize that may be the case, but I actually do think True Grit's really high up there. I think actually True Grit may be number one.
I was going to end on True Grit regardless because True Grit is just a great movie. It's a great remake of a movie, and I knew that you'd love it. I didn't know you'd already seen it, but I knew that you'd love that one.
Yeah, no, I did. And to be fair, like I had forgotten so much of it that I might as well watching it first time, but it was like, oh yeah, this is the one with so-and-so in it. And, oh, okay, I remember the scene vaguely. Like I think I maybe saw it like on cable a year after it came out, and then I never saw it again. So might as well never seen it.
Do you know how I knew that you'd love True Grit?
Why?
You love Star Trek. And Star Trek is a bunch of people and big debates and like a lot of like talking and speechifying at people. True Grit is people put a lot of speechifying at people, except in the woods.
You're not wrong.
Speaking and it's of moody and it's beautifully shot.
Yeah, no, it is definitely. It actually got me wanting to go check out more Coen Brothers movies because, frankly, it just proves that my knowledge of that oeuvre is just pitifully small. But something I do want to actually talk about, since we're doing recaps here. We've touched off and on, kind of ad hoc, on the role of violence in how the genre is presented. And so I think maybe we could kind of see if we could synthesize any thoughts on that, because like we've talked about how violence can act as an indicator of danger, right? Like super pulpy violence is just fun versus extremely gritty violence means people are very much in danger all the time. And also violence as a pacing mechanic. Whereas, like, you have movies like Django or Billy the Kid where violence is frequent and just used to kind of add a bit of a break. Whereas True Grit's violence happens extremely infrequently and is devastating and chaotic when it happens. Um, is there a synthesis view of violence in westerns, or is it very much up to the western in question of like where violence lands and how it works?
In my opinion, I would say it's up to the Western and how it lands and how it's supposed to function.
Okay.
Because I think the biggest thing about the Westerns is that violence is necessary on some aspect to either like protect the community, to bring justice, or so forth and so on. And it's the people that execute the violence for the greater good. I'm using finger quotes for the greater good have done it to protect whatever it is, but by doing that violence, they can no longer be part of that community, or they're always outsiders. Like True
Right.
Grit, the ultimate example of that. Maddie would be like a character that's part of that community and everything else. Her father's dies. She chooses violence, and after she executes Chauncey or whoever it is, she then is essentially no longer part of that society. We see it like she is a functioning member, she's successful, but she's always apart. Or how Rooster is relegated to like Wild West shows and everything else on the fringes of society, and that's
Right.
constantly reinforced.
And so from that point, then I guess that explains characters like the preacher in Pale Rider or Django, of someone who comes into a community and is the person that is tasked by the community to enact violence on their behalf before they are forced to leave again.
Yes. Or they do said violence and they're like ousted from whatever the community is.
Right. And then even to like the Oxbow incident, like where those two characters who were part of the community ultimately chose a violent path and felt they needed to leave afterwards because they could not look at the community the same way.
Well, if you remember, they were outsiders who came in.
Well, if I remember, again, this is like
They were like
half a year ago. So
they were known, but they weren't like community. So that's like one of the debates we had about things like where did they land really?
Right. That's a good point. That's good. Yes. Now that you say that, I do remember the conversation. Yes. So
Or even
known by the
Blazing
community is
Saddles.
not the same as part of the community. Right. Yeah. Blazing Saddles, like Bart is very much not a part of the community, but that is used to examine racism.
Yeah.
In
Let's say Bart's
way.
the outsider that comes in, does violence for the community, in some sense leads the community in violence, him and the kid. And at the end of the movie, they both ride off in the sunset.
Right.
And get in the limousine and drive off.
Although also literally they're so ostracized that they're actually forced out of their own movie briefly, which is also funny.
Yeah. So that's part of how I've always taken it to be.
Okay, so what's interesting
kind
of
how the Doctor also comes into different communities, does some violence and some shenanigans, and then leaves.
Okay, that's a good point. So what's interesting is that a lot of the longer runs we've done, inadvertently, I think, just because it's just how Western media has evolved. Superheroes, mecha, anime, and Westerns all have some form of violence is a codified trope in those genres. That works in fairly specific ways, except when you actually look at the body of work and realize that very few of the components that work actually do work in that specific codified way.
Like what?
So, for example, in Westerns, how many gunfights do we see of two men standing facing each other on a street at high noon before they drew a gun? I think there's 3 of them, and one of them was a joke.
So,
right.
Western the Western had a gunfight essentially at high noon. High Noon does not have a gunfight at high noon.
Weirdly enough, yes. Blazing Saddles has one, but again, it's a joke.
Yeah. Um,
And I believe Billy the Kid versus Dracula had one, but I could be misremembering that.
I don't think so. But
Okay,
Quick and the Dead had a lot of them.
true. That okay. So yes, there are 3 or 4, right? But out of all of these, right,
Depends
it
on how
very
you want
rarely
to look
happened.
at it. True Grit technically would have one, but he draws on like 4 people and charges them. It's but I know what you're saying. Essentially, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, by that quibbling, also Sukiyaki Western Django technically had one, right? But one had a sword. But that's the point. Like, it's like we have to break down the rigid trope and put in like qualifiers before we can get even to a reasonable number. Similarly, like well, actually, as a counterpoint in superheroes, uh, it became almost a running joke of like, this is the last act, so 2 guys are going to punch each other a lot, and that happens quite frequently in the superhero run as a codified violent trope. That happened a lot, but not as much as you would have thought, considering the body of data we had.
Well, if you want a high noonish superhero moment, is in Captain America and the Winter Soldier, where on the boat Cap throws out his shield and Batroc the Leaper. I didn't think I was going to bring up Batroc the Leaper this episode. Yes, I love Batroc the
Oh,
Leaper. He and
oh,
Batroc the Leaper go at it. Captain
your
America versus Batroc.
your favorite Marvel character next to Stingray.
I love Batroc the Leaper. Every superhero game I run, I break out Batroc the Leaper in the first or second scenario to fuck with the player characters.
I should bring him in my new Marvel game. I have to write it down.
You should. Like
Especially because it's
him
based in London.
and
So
him and MODOK are my favorite 2 like random villains just to randomly throw it.
I did throw
Batroc because
MODOK
he's easy to
into.
beat, but fun to fuck with.
I did throw MODOK into my Super Scroll Roll20 adventure I wrote because it's
Good.
MODOK. I have to do it. It's a big
Which
floating head.
version of MODOK?
The big floating head one.
No. I mean, like, which acronym for MODOK?
Oh, Mobile Organism Designed for Killing.
Thank you. Because there's like different versions of that.
Yeah, whatever. Mobile Organism Designed for Killing. Organized Killing, whatever. That one. The O is always a bit wonky. Okay, so yeah, but again, what's interesting for me is like I came into this with superheroes. We were both very knowledgeable of it, and so we knew going into like a lot of the stereotypical tropes don't actually hold up, so that we didn't really examine those. For this one, I didn't necessarily know that, and so I had certain set pieces in my head that we just didn't see very often, to the point where I was excited to see a guy jumping out of a building onto a horse, like the 2 or 3 times it happened. Because like, hey, the guy jumped out of a horse. One time it got a slow motion stoppy thingy to really emphasize the guy jumping out of the window on a horse.
All right. I'm surprised that Sukiyaki Western Django did not reach your top of your favorite list anywhere.
If we accept the top 5, there's a very good chance it would probably be on that list, right? Just because it's, I don't know, it's definitely an acquired taste, and I think maybe if I watched it a couple more times, maybe it might move up, right? But like it's such a specific thing to me. Its own, again, like El Topo, right? It's like it's doing its own very specific thing, and it goes into a larger point that we've had. This is like, is it a Western? I mean, it is, but is it? You know, I mean, the question of is blah a Western is both stupid, because the whole point of this podcast is that genre is a porous boundary that you can shove anything into or out of. So that's the reason we do this whole analysis and long form, is to show that these things are arbitrary. But this compilation has really shown how broad the genre really is, and it still can be meaningfully called a Western. You know, like I think El Topo is the one movie I could think of that like I genuinely questioned. It's like, is it just because they're wearing hats and riding horses that the only reason this is a Western? And you convinced me to it. You convinced me into accepting it as such. But that was a discussion. Everything else, I could make an argument for or against, but that would just be an academic exercise, right? Like nothing on this list I looked at before or after did I go, I don't think it belongs on the list, right? I was, these are all perfect westerns, but compare Sergeant Rutledge to Pale Rider or Django to Stagecoach, and like they're wildly different films,
Which goes back to showing like the strength of the Western genre that essentially propelled Hollywood to the success that it had. Like Westerns were the reason that Hollywood became successful
Right.
before it moved on. Like it did most of the heavy lifting for the entire franchise, for the entire industry.
And again, like something that since we started doing this, I've been noticing. I might have mentioned like I'm reading Western comics, but also one of the things we didn't really cover is I've also listened to the occasional Western radio program, right? And like Gunsmoke, the radio show, is basically a Western soap opera.
I think the TV series ran for like 20 years, 27 years, I think.
Yeah, the radio show also had like hundreds of episodes. They both went for long times.
So, funnily enough, for Gunsmoke, they show you the predominance of John Wayne for like the pilot episode of it. They had John Wayne tell people they need to watch Gunsmoke because he loved it.
Wow. But like, I Drive Through RPG, Drive Through Comics. They have a couple of publishers. What they do is they take public domain comics, follow public domain, and they will remaster them and clean them up so you can read them more easily and release them for like $1 for 80 pages over. And so I picked up a few of those that have older, like 40s, 50s Western comics. And again, we've talked about this before in Speechless, but like older comics tend to be 6 to 10 pages long, and you have lots of them bound together. And so you're able to show you a wide variety of them. And like there were romance Western comics, there were legal drama Western comics. Obviously, there were action adventure Western comics too. There were comedy Westerns. And so like the whole run, I've been kind of in the back of my head going, what is there a indisputable indicator you could point to and say, this is undeniably a Western or this is undeniably not a Western? And I don't think there is. I think it's all vibes, man. I think it's like, I don't know, it just feels like a Western.
To some extent, it's all aesthetics now.
Mm-hmm. Right. But yet, and that's why in a way I'm glad we ended on True Grit. True Grit was a novel written, what, 50s? 60s?
60s. It was written in 67, 68, and the movie came out in 69.
So, like, it was written as the Western was starting to play with itself a little bit, but still was fairly codified form, its classic form. Remade 50 years later, and remade, as we talked about in that episode, extremely faithful to its novel format, and it feels like a modern film. It feels very much like this is how just drama works in 2010, but still it works more or less that way now. And that was a Western at the time when Western novels were slightly declining. They're not at their heights, but they were not completely gone either. So back then it was published and well received as just a traditional Western novel in some form, and is remade in its very close form into a movie that feels very modern and fresh now. So that weirdly also shows the timelessness of Western. Even though we talked about so much of the evolution of it, you can take a novel from 50, 70 years ago, remake it now, and it doesn't feel dated.
Yeah.
I find that fascinating.
If it's well written.
To be fair. If it's garbage, it'll feel bad.
So, Eddie, to closing thoughts on our Western run. Anything left? Any final big thoughts, conclusions, proclamations?
It's all right.
Oh God.
No. I mean, I've already said this, but I think it's maybe kind of worth recapping a little bit. Is that I feel very differently about the genre now than when we started, and all of those feelings are to the positive. I feel like a lot of my assumptions were definitely undermined. And so I feel like I have a better appreciation of what westerns actually can be and should be, arguably. Uh, to the point where I think I would be even interested in looking at substandard westerns because I can appreciate better what it's doing badly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the trappings of it.
Right, right. Before there was just a collection of things. Now it's like, now I know where it came from, why it works this way, why people expect certain things. I also can appreciate, like we did with Blazing Saddles, I can appreciate satire of westerns better now because I understand what it's actually satirizing better. So this was for me very helpful for me to deeply understand a genre that I misunderstood and did not appreciate, and I do now appreciate more.
Can you see why I love westerns, curiously?
Yes, I do actually. I mean, I can't speak to your specific emotional feelings towards it, but like I can see why you looked at this and were surprised slash concerned that I was going, I don't really like westerns. And now it's like, oh, okay. No, I get why you would be like, wait a minute, what do you mean you don't like westerns? Here, watch this. Which is, as we know, the best way to make friends is to force them to watch things that they think they won't like.
You know what? I would, if anyone's questioning, I think that has worked pretty well for our friendship, my friend.
To be fair, it has. You're not wrong.
But we're that 1 in a million. Right. So, Eddie, we bored people to some extent with our pontificating about westerns. What can they expect us to do next? Since it will not be horror westerns, sci-fi westerns, or western the western westerns. What are we doing?
So, it's my turn to inflict something on Chris. We've decided this. And so, keeping my theme, we are going to watch a lot of Kamen Rider. And for those of you who don't know, Kamen Rider is a very long-running Japanese superhero show. It's been going on since the 70s. And every season is a complete reboot of the concept. So, like, every season is completely different. The only thing they have in common is there's a guy in a suit, and sometimes he rides a motorcycle. That's basically it. It recently, a number of them have become available with subtitles in English to a wider Western audience. And so it's something that I thought it might be worth going through and talking about because, again, they're so very, very different. So we're going to go through the 6 that are available legally and a couple of movies that are also available legally. So our choices are very limited by what we can watch, but we'll see.
So my question for you, are they all subtitles or are they dubbed? And if they are, which one should we be watching?
I believe they are all subtitles. The 2 movies that we watched so long story short, Amazon Prime made a deal to produce some specific Kamen Rider stuff as a co-production, similar to how Disney was co-producing Doctor Who ZBC for a while. Prime has been co-producing Kamen Rider with TV Tokyo for a while. I believe some of those may have dub tracks as well as subtitle tracks. Everything else is just subtitles because it's a lot of children's television to try to have to dub. So when in doubt, if there are multiple options, we're going to go with the subtitles.
Okay. What are we starting with?
Oh, yeah, that's right. We're going to start with the OG. We're going to start with Kamen Rider, the original, 1971. There are a lot of episodes and a lot of weird shit happens. But we're going to boil it down to 4 episodes, which is, as always, the pilot, The Mysterious Spider-Man, not Spider-Man you're thinking. Episode 14, Raid of the Demon Sobekatron, I guess. Episode 40, Deathmatch, Monster Showdown versus 2 Riders. And episode 52, My Name is Mysterious Birdman Gilgalas. That tells you a lot of what you need to know about this show.
So, Eddie, if people are looking to come talk to you or support you, talk to you about Westerns, talk to you about why you chose this out of everything you could, where could they do that? And where can they get you money to keep doing this thing with me for another 5 years?
But if you want to support me, the best way to do that is to go to my website, pugsteady.com. I mentioned Pugmire because I've recently combined my Pugmire website with my Pugsteady website. I just needed to cut down on website hosting. So it's now all in one convenient place. And Realms of Pugmire is my creator-owned game that will get me money in my pocket. So that's the best way to do that. But I would love to talk about any of this stuff on the Darker Hue Discord. And we've been having a few people chat a little bit with us on Discord recently. It was nice to see. Usually it boils down to, this is the thing that Eddie was trying to remember. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. And a couple times it's I'm surprised you guys didn't cover X, which usually comes down to Risk going, yeah, I wanted to, but Eddie said no. So, but otherwise, you have interesting conversations. So come check us out.
Or on the rare moment, someone says, I can't believe you didn't make X or Y connection.
Right. And we're both like, yeah. That would have been good. That would have been a smart thing to say if we had thought of it.
If you're looking to contact me, you can do that on dark_hue on Blue Sky. You can jump in the Discord. If you want to support me, I've got a Patreon, Harlem Unbounding, making a sci-fi World of Warn game. Or you come to my website. I think I still have a website. I sell stuff on it. It's Darker Hue Studios. But for this to end the Western run, I've got one more quote I want to end with that encapsulates the entire Western genre and kind of the West itself in some aspects. When the legend becomes fact, print the legend.